privilege of introducing our speaker tonight. And I want to thank all of you for coming and participating in the second of the Walter Durham lecture series. We had this in the fall, and it was a big success, so we repeated it this spring. And we've had lots of requests for our committee to get ready for next fall. So we will do our best, and if some of you would like a special program, know a wonderful speaker, just contact the library and get a message to friends of the library, and we'll put it on our work list. Walter Durham was a personal friend of mine, and I attended church with him. I read most of his 24 books. I've known Glenda Milliken for a long, long time, and know she had just the great pleasure of being his assistant. And he, in fact, was the honorary chairman of the Gallatin Public Library fundraising committee that organized in 2006. We were able, through his efforts and his committee, to raise enough money to build this wonderful new Gallatin Public Library. When this library opened, Friends of the Library decided we could really up our participation. So we've got about 19 members on our Friends board, and we do a lot of fundraising to assist the programs here at the library. Well, there were a lot of very generous people who made memorial gifts to the library in honor of Walter Durham. So we decided to have this lecture series. And many of you saw this in the paper, and been attended several of our events, and hopefully you have gotten one of our programs which listed all of the different participants. We will hopefully do this again in the fall, and I look forward to seeing you then again. Now, Judge Gayden has spoken about this book on several occasions here in Gallatin, and I'm looking forward to hearing him tell some more stories. But the reason we called him is that he's writing a third book, and it has a most unusual title. So I will let him explain that to you. I just don't understand it myself.
Well, thank you very much for inviting me to this series. I feel very humbled to even be in the same building with Walter. With his 24 books and my two, I feel like I'm in the Little Leagues playing the New York Yankees at Yankee Stadium. Anyway, the password today is the rain in Spain is mainly in Cross Plains. Right? So yeah, I appreciate all of y'all coming and getting dry, get in your cars and coming here tonight. It's unusual when I got asked to do this. I haven't given a speech on my books for some time. And so when Grace asked me to do it, I thought, well, what am I going to talk about? An unpublished manuscript, which is going to be the end subject, but I'm going to get there by telling you what I do as a writer, part-time, the things I've considered about writing, the things that I have written, and to get around to the book that will be published is The Snakes Don't Rise, and Creeks Don't Rise, and Snakes Don't Come. Again, Walter, I'm jealous of Walter and all the things he did, both in his private life, his charitable life, and his business life. I don't see how in the world he wrote 24 books. Then I picked up the New York Times yesterday, and I saw where Mary Clark Higgins has written 43 books, and she's 90 years old. So I'm getting at least the spirit as a young 70-something-year-old to write more books. I was up at Craig Front, I think about 2006, and I started writing this book. A friend of mine told me about this story, and I started researching it, and I couldn't find any records of a trial, a murder trial, which happened in Nashville, involving all Gallatin people. There just wasn't any. So I had to go to the 3 national newspapers, the Tennessean, the Nashville Democrat, the Nashville Banner, and there were a lot of stories about this in here. So I started asking around. I asked John Sigenthaler, who's not with us anymore, whether he had heard of this story involving Anna Dodson. And he had never heard of it. I called Nathan Harsh. He had never heard of it. But I was up at Craig Fund in 2006, and I was drinking wine with Walter, and I asked Walter, have you ever heard of this story? And he said, never heard of it. I thought, I'm going to write this book. If the Durhams had got hold of it, I'm going to write this book. Well, I ran into him in the street about maybe 3 or 4 months later in Nashville, and he said, my sister, Ann, I think her name is that correct? Ann.
Wife Ann.
Well, his wife, okay. Said, she's gotten real interest in that story you've been telling me about in Craig Fund. So Walter's written 25 books, because I went home, turned on the midnight oil, wrote that darn thing, got it copyrighted. I never told him that. I'd probably been sitting in my can, still trying to write it if he had said my sister, my wife was really interested in that. So I do a little bit to Walter. And then I came up here to one of the book programs with the Guild House, Daniel Soiree at the Guild House, and he sat beside me with all of his books. I just had this one. And to show how humble it was, he promoted my book all day. I sold a lot of books to him, excuse me. Anyway, so I wrote this book, and one of the reasons I brought it back today was because by writing this next book, I'm hoping very much to get this republished. And I'll tell you what's happened. The publisher is Hachette. They're the second biggest in the world with a local contact in a local division here in Nashville called Center Street, or Faith Works. And I let my friend of mine read my manuscript for Miscarriage of Justice, and he said, I have a friend who's in the publishing business, and he was the CEO of Sumner Street and Faith Works. And we got a call from him, and he said, I want to talk to you and your buddy. So we went down there. We sat around the table. I know I was going to get a refusal. He said, we're going to print this book, talk about Miscarriage of Justice. Well, you know, that was pretty easy. I said, he said, if we can work out a deal with you. So that took about 10 minutes. We worked out a deal. And they printed 10,000 hard copy books that you see right here. And they released it during 2008 and 2009. It was a time when the book industry was going down. Even the book and mortar stores were closing. Eventually, almost all of them closed. So it was kind of a bad scene from a book standpoint. And they had 1,200 returns. And they called me on the telephone and said, we'll sell them to you for $2 a book. So I bought 1,200 books and have 400 left in my house right now. You know? But all in all, it sold about 10,000 books. And I kind of forget about this book every once in a while, but when you ask me to speak, again, I looked up Amazon, which I haven't done in 2 years. And lo and behold, if you look up this, you look up new books and punch in new books, and it'll have about 6 or 7 places where you can buy it. The cheapest is $16, and the most expensive is $117. $117, and all of them are close to 5-star in all the stores. So I want to get this republished. I may make some changes. So that's really my drive, is to get another book at the same time. Try to pull off Your Dream, the John Grisham and Mary Higgins Clark. Both of them had their first books, went down the tubes. But I don't call this down the tubes. 10,000 is a good number. I don't know where these people get the books. That also bothers me a little bit, because our publisher, you can buy this book on the Kindle for $9.99, and I get the reports on the Kindle. I don't get any books about them selling books. So I don't know where in the world these people have all these books to sell them for $16, and I'll look at that later. And another thing happened. How many of you know Jade Mayberry? Anybody know her? She's a lawyer in town. Are you kidding her?
She and I talked this morning.
All right.
In fact, I'll tell you about that.
Right.
After this.
Jade also had something to do with my book. Back when I had my manuscript, she's a lawyer, and she had a case in my court, and we were going over an order, and she was in my office, and I said, Jade, have you ever heard of a case in Gallatin where most of you read it, where a lady shot her boyfriend, and I was looking, she didn't say anything. I looked up and she was turning red face. She was talking about my great-grandfather and grandmother. So I went back and I edited all the sex parts out of it. I watered it, which probably helped me too, because it got past FaithWorks and Sinistry, which are faith-based books out of Brentwood, part of Asheville. And that has to do with my next manuscript I'll tell you about too. Anyway, so Jade had a lot to do with it, and I promised her I'd let her read it. And I never did do that because I never did catch her, but I think she was okay with it. So as I said, we got published. We had an editor out of Texas A&M I've never met. But Sinistry and FaithWorks only kept this book up for a year and a half on its and what had happened, so I'm told. Although the publisher loved my book, as it went down further, it got a little bit less traction with a religious-based organization. It did have sex in it. In fact, they published it one time as part of a religious genre, when it wasn't. It was romantic mystery and murder. And then I heard they got a lot of beef from, where's the preacher? He's probably good. But they got a lot of feedback from the religious part of their public. So it kind of got waylaid, and it was also competing against none other than The Shack. The Shack came out about the same time, and my book was just. So anyway, but I had a good relationship with Rolf Featherston, who's the CEO. So I'm going to skip and come back to it. With my last manuscript, again, he loved my book. I'm talking about now, Suicide by Proxy. Sent it to the editorial board. He wouldn't do it. Had too much sex, too risque. But it's a true story. You have to make things colorful, so I'm not going to give up on it. But they actually helped me rewrite it, so we kept our relationship. But I have not farmed it, because in 2014 I had to run for re-election. And my campaign manager read it. He said, "Do not publish this book for the election." So I got elected in 2014, and to be honest with you, I've been so busy with so many things in the last 4 years. I did make an attempt to get an agent. I've written 25 agents, and I've got turned down, but I'm not going to stop there, and I'm going to tell you about that story. I went out to South Carolina with this book I got invited to the South Carolina Book Fest, which was a big deal. And I set up a table after giving a talk with a lady. Her name was Catherine Stockett. Does anybody know that name? Mm-hmm. Well, Catherine Stockett wrote a book, and she had taken it to Kinko's, apparently, and even the pages didn't match. And she was a fill-in for somebody else. And I felt sorry for her. My wife felt sorry for her. And she gave me a book. We all switched copies. It was autographed. And I took it back to our room, and we had like 30 books. But taking it back in the car, we kept the pretty ones. That's how intellectual I really am. And threw away the old ones. I'll never forget taking Catherine's book and throwing it. I played basketball at Vanderbilt, so I know it. Man, I had the waistband perfect with that book. Well, I came back to Nashville, and about 4 months later, I picked up the newspaper and said, "Man, The Help. Have you heard that book, The Help?" That's the girl that I threw the door. This is a bad story on me. Anyway, I called my friend many months later. We had a bookstore in North Atlanta. I said, "I even have to ask you this, because I know I'm going to have to sit down and pour a glass of wine or something. How much is that book worth?" Because you just threw away $1,500. So anyway, that's one of the downs. But I've had ups too. This book was actually voted the best book in Nashville, published book, in 2009. So I really have a lot of hope for this book, as well as doing the other. So what have I been doing for 4 years? Actually, I've been doing a lot of research on another book I wrote, my first book, called The Circle of the Cross. And that's another book that's in the making, maybe. And it has to do with, and I'm not going to bore you with it, with M-I-P-O-W. And if you're looking for a book to write, Amazon does recommend one book, of two right now. It's called The Men We Left Behind by Mark Sutter. And if you want to read an interesting book, a true historical book, read that book. I do think that there's a chance that something may happen with all that's going on with Korea, Vietnam, China. You may see some shocking news about men who've been kept behind in Laos, Cambodia, and Vietnam. And I don't get into this because this is a subject that I spend a lot of time on, and you probably think I'm a conspiracy, so I'm not going to do too much of that. how many of you read this book? I don't want to embarrass you, quite a few, so I'm not going to even talk too much about the book, but if you're interested in the book, I have copies here. And the new books, as I said, are going for $16 to $117, and for you guys, I'll sell you one for $10 autograph. After I published this book, I did go down several avenues looking for a subject to publish, and I thought it might be interesting to tell you some of them. One, of course, I am doing now, and that is I'm getting ready to retire within a couple of years. So I want to write about some of the cases I had tried in my court, and I'm keeping kind of a journal of that. I'll give you a flavor of a couple of them. I had a funny kind of court officer, he's not with me anymore, but he always was playing jokes. He came to me one day and said, in your divorce docket on Friday afternoon, contempt docket, you've got the smallest man in the world coming in. He told me that's on a Tuesday. I didn't believe it, he's always kidding me about something. So Friday came in and I walked into the courtroom, and seated to my right was a guy in a wheelchair about this tall. And over the left was one of the Wallen's. He'd been with the barn of Beta Circus. He really was the smallest man in the world one time. So he had shot his wife. The gun was almost as big as he was. And it was also a criminal prosecution. And so we started the case, and right in the middle of the case when the police officer was testifying, and this was a civil contempt case. This little guy said, Judge Gayden, now I'll use some abbreviations. He said, Judge Gayden, you SOB, you can't do anything to me. If you do anything to me, I'll put your name on the front page of the Nashville Tennessean. Well, I had a Gallatin and I said, you can't talk like that. I don't care if you're the smallest man in the world. Most famous man, you can't do that. So then his wife got up on the stand, he went bananas. He said, apparently, Judge Gayden, you didn't understand me. He said, if you do anything to me, I'll put your name on the front page of the Nashville Tennessean. I said, well, guess what? We're going to see. Wheel him out. 10 days. So they wheeled him out. So the next morning, my wife called me down. She beat me down to the newspaper at breakfast. She said, you better come read this. I go down in the Middle Tennessee section, not the big. It says, Judge put smallest man in the world in jail. And I tell you, it took me a year to get my political traction back on. So the moral of that story was beware of small packages. And on a serious note, I did try the Aaron Andrews case, which was about 16 months ago now. And that was, for me, a fantastic experience. A lot of people doubted Aaron Andrews and doubted her sincerity. I had no opinion one way or another as the case went on, but I can testify that she was more interested in proving a point than the $55 million verdict that she got. And I can tell you right now, it wasn't $55 million. It's a secret settlement, but she wanted to prove a point. So when you go to a motel now, and you see that key, that eyepiece with the sliding cover, Aaron Andrews is responsible for that all over the United States. So she made a point, and kudos to her. So that's one thing I started talking about, I started writing about. In one of my book signings, a lady came up to me and she told me about her own family story. And she said, you might be interested in writing this. So I started doing research on it. And what it was, she came from Illinois, from Indiana. In Gary, Indiana, her brother was married to a woman that killed him and killed her father and another kid. It was a serious case. It was a mass murder case. And the girl that did the killing was given life sentence, I don't know why, the lecture chair, but she had the life sentence. And she wanted me to write about it because the governor of Indiana, in his last week at that time, pardoned her and let her go free. And this lady was telling me about how it hurt her family, knowing that this woman's out. Said she went to Cleveland, Tennessee, and she was a caretaker for this family. She knew their name. So I started doing research, and I researched the murder and the trial and horrible case. So I did what I had to do. I contacted the family. She'd been a caretaker for the very wealthy lumberman in Bradley County, Cleveland, Tennessee. and he had died. So I got hold of his daughter and I said, yeah, I'm gonna bring this up to you, and you just hang up the telephone, I'd love to talk to you. He said, do you know his daughter? I said, she's a wonderful woman. Said, she was so great to my dad. Said, she's buried in a family cemetery. And I said, well, yeah, that's great. I said, did you know about her past? He said, no, she came through the church there, Church of God. And she had converted, and for all signs, she had converted and became a Christian. But I said, I have to tell you this. And I told her that, and she said, oh my God. You know, I didn't get to go any further because the family that asked me to do it told me not to do it. They backed out. So that was the end of that little book. I had one in my own family that I'm working on, and I will continue to work on. And I apologize because my dad was from Texas, and my mother was from here. And when you talk about family in Texas, you don't talk about anybody past your father or mother. You don't talk about grandfather, cattle rustler, that kind of thing. So he didn't like this, so I'm coming at you from two sides. But I had a great-grandfather that I'm trying to make this a good story that people want to read. But he was, I'll tell you a little bit about him. He was born in Mississippi. His father was a chancellor judge of northern Mississippi. He joined the Confederate Army at age 15, was a flag bearer in 5 known battles. He survived, and I'm gonna skip over. I had a great uncle named Randall McGowan, who was a mayor of Nashville in 1856. And he was killed in Mississippi in battle, south of where my great-grandfather was. My great-grandfather's mother and him were sisters and brothers. And so my great-grandfather had no education for 5 years. He was busy with the war. And he brought Randall McGowan's body up to Mount Olivet. And the family kept him here in Nashville, there in Nashville. And he got educated at the University of Nashville, and then went on to Columbia Law School and became a famous guy because he's kind of not remembered, but he became president of the American Bar Association. He became a big Chicago lawyer, and he was also Secretary of War, which back then was the fourth in line to the presidency. For a guy like that to think that in the 20th century could sit in a cabinet and be a Confederate veteran, he's the only one ever to do that. So it was a great story for me because he was quite a character, and he actually became famous for being a Lincoln file. He gave a lot of money to Lincoln Memorial University. So he's kind of a convert. So people in Nashville didn't much like that anyway. That's one story that I'm still working on. Now we'll get around to suicide by proxy. I didn't know how to present this because suicide by proxy is the same genre as this one. It is a romantic murder mystery. It involves a killing. But because my publisher of this one turned me down on one of the grounds, which is true, it was a regional book, and this happened in Columbus, Ohio. And they even tried to get in touch with somebody who'd be interested in Columbus, Ohio, and I'm still looking for that. But anyway, it means that I'm going to have to go to Columbus, Ohio, not just once, but several times, just like I come to Gallatin. And I couldn't do that with what I do for a living. I couldn't make my schedule that way. So it had a regional problem. But I'm going to get it published. I remember the Sisters in Crime in Columbus. I've been up there one time. There's no transcript of this one either, as it turned out. So I did all my research, by the way, if you're interested in writing, through Library Exchange. I got all the Columbus newspapers and other newspapers. The one that I am going to publish, either by myself or some way, suicide by proxy was reported in the New York Times. That's where I first saw it. So it's not just the national newspapers and the Gallatin newspaper. This was a big story. So I'm going to tell you a little bit something about it. And I'll probably tell all of it because, this is not closed. But the story begins with, I'll read this to you. Maybe you'll get a sense why the publishers of the Shack didn't want to be a part of this, as it turns out. Cecilia Farley and Pearl Luce were seated on the Queen Anne settee, located in the parlor in Cecilia Farley's family home, conversing and yes, gossiping about the past week's happenings. The two of them were often in each other's company. They were closer than sisters, and their friendship extended for over 2 decades. When the two girls were youngsters, Cecilia's father used to say, You two are snug as two bugs in a rug. And it was true. They want a book? I'll show it to you.
And I had that thing turned off too, kid. It's off now.
And it was true. When they were teenagers, they even created their own secret ceremony to celebrate, consummate their past and future devotion to each other. In their ceremony, they pricked their index fingers, pressing the fingers against each other, exchanging blood, memorializing their unbridled commitment to each other forever. Now they were in their mid-20s, and although much water had gone under the bridge and the years had passed, yet neither woman questioned the depth and perseverance of their commitment to each other. But the intractable bond was about to be confronted with an ultimate test. It was on this Friday afternoon when abruptly the wall telephone located in the hallway started clanging. Cecilia jumped up from the settee and scurried into the hallway, pulling the earpiece from the cradle, answering the Farley residence. Soon, Cecilia's voice lowered, almost to a whisper. Pearl, still seated on the couch in the parlor, leaned over, straining to listen. Pearl quickly surmised the caller on the other end of the line was Alvin Zollinger, Cecilia's longtime past lover, who would not leave Cecilia alone. The conversation lasted for a few minutes, during which Cecilia's voice became increasingly louder and constrained and strident and panicky. Pearl could plainly hear Cecilia repeating over and over again, "Please, Alvin, please don't do it. If you do, I will kill myself." Suddenly in the hallway, Cecilia slid down to the floor, her back against the wall, with the mouthpiece falling to the floor, making a thudding wood on wood sound. Pearl got up from the couch and quickly went into the hallway to find Cecilia in a sitting position, back against the wall, still back against the wall, and incessantly choking. "Oh, for heaven's sake, what's wrong?" Pearl asked, sitting down beside her. There was an eerie period of silence. Pearl grasped Cecilia's hands, repeating, "What's wrong?" After a long hesitation, grabbing hold of her composure, "It's over. My life is ended," Cecilia whispered. "Oh, come on, what do you mean? For God's sake, please tell me, please tell me." Slowly, in a monotone-like voice, Cecilia said, "Pearl, I have told you almost everything about me and Alvin, but I have omitted something that happened between me and him that I haven't told you because it's so devastating, so shameful, and so much I cannot live if it were to make the light of day." "Cecilia," Pearl demanded, shaking Cecilia's hands up and down, "please, please tell me what are you talking about?" "I will tell you, but I want to tell you so you will know why I have killed myself. But you have to make me a solemn promise that I will never ever repeat or divulge what I will tell you, whether I'm alive or dead. Do you promise?" "Of course." "Well then, back 4 or 5 years ago," Cecilia's telling the story, "on an afternoon when Alvin and me were having sex, he jumped up out of the bed and opened the package he had brought with him, saying, 'I have a surprise for you, for us.' He pulled out a 1907 Brownie camera that included a self-development kit that came with it. He then coached me into letting him take 8 pictures of us making love in different positions. I let him do it because I wanted to please him. I didn't think he could develop the pictures. I never heard of such. I thought it was all a game. However, he developed the pictures in the washroom. The pictures are very clear with my face in all the pictures. His face is not in any one of them. I tried to grab the pictures, but he was too quick. He kept the pictures all this time. He promised to give them to me, but he never did. He just told me on the telephone that if I didn't meet him and come back to him and have sex with him, he was going to show the pictures to certain folks, including my new boyfriend. And then I'll have the pictures in the front, then I'll put the pictures on the front page of cigarette packages and send the pictures to the Columbus newspaper. I begged him not to, but to no avail. And I won't go back to him. And I shall kill myself. I will die before my parents would have to suffer from the scandal that will surely follow. If I die before Alvin shows the pictures, I don't think he'll show them." She pondered. Pearl let go of one of Celia's hands, put her own hands to her lips, murmuring, "Oh my God, we have to do something. And you don't need to be talking about suicide, you hear? We'll take care of this. Let's go back to the parlor." They resumed their places on the settee. "Celia, we're going to get hold of these pictures, whatever it takes." He said he would give me 1 week to come back to him, or Look, see, we need to find someone we trust who will confront him with an appropriate threat of bodily harm. Someone he's afraid of. After a short pause, he said, I don't want any harm to come to Alvin. Well, let me think about it, Pearl responded. For Pearl was once again dumbfounded over Cea's continued affinity with past lover, thinking to herself, if it was me, Alvin Zollinger would soon be pushing to from 6 feet under, even if it's by my own hands. Abruptly, Cea's parents pulled up the car to the curb. Your parents are here, Cia. Come to my house tonight, please. We can make plans. Pearl was walking back to her home, 2 blocks from Cecilia's home, up on East Main Street, digesting the shocking revelation of the Luke pictures. Her mind went to the single most disturbing, complex thing about Celia's mindset regarding her ex-lover. It was the most troubling and exasperating threat to Pearl's continued boundless friendship to Celia. The mystery of Celia still loving her abuser, Alvin Zollinger, after all these years of abuse. How could she questioned herself. As she woke, she started thinking about how the relationship between Alvin Zollinger and Celia Farley began and lasted. Maybe there was an answer to the mystery. I don't know how much longer I can help her, but I sure don't want her to be dead. And this was a true story. The characters sounded rough, but the truth is, they weren't rough. Alvin Zollinger, the lover, was head of the Columbus newspaper advertising department. Pearl Luce and Cecilia Farley, the protagonist, Cecilia Farley, the protagonist, were from very affluent families. They were actually from Catholic families. Cecilia was the oldest of 5 children. Her father was head of the foresters for the Catholic Church for all of southern Ohio. Her father had been superintendent of the prison. Cecilia had been a very vibrant, popular person in high school. She was the most popular in senior class. She actually had a college degree, a business degree. She got messed up with this guy over a long period of time. I'm not going to tell you what happened, except to say that it's a romantic mystery. I hope to have it published. It made the New York Times. It involved a jury of all men, whether the men would, how much weight they would give to her life. It was an interesting story, and I ran across it, and it has all the things that it would make a good story. But as you can imagine, it with a shack on one end and reading this book on the other, I didn't get very far with my last publisher, but I'm going to publish it. I'm open for questions. I have a whole lot more to talk about. I'm sorry. Oh yeah, I want to talk about this book right here. My first novel. I tell you, I'm going to bore you with this. I wrote this book, and it's a fiction story about a MI POW who actually returns to the United States secretly under a false name. And make a long story short, this book landed me in front of the U.S. Senate MI POW committee in 1993, and I testified in front of them. I got involved in that book because my first cousin was a pilot, and he was shot down in a prison up next to the Chinese border in the Vietnam War for 5.5 years. And he was one that came back. He was one of the lucky ones that came back. He's now deceased. But he convinced me within a short time that not all the POWs, there were 600 some odd that came back, that they were not all his prison camp came back. And so I got convinced, and I stayed with that. I'm still with that a little bit. I still do a lot of research. So that's my other book. It sold 6,000 copies. And I'm still writing, I'm still interested, and I'd love to ask you questions.
Can you tell us a little bit about Miscarriage of Justice for those of us that haven't read it?
I'm glad to do that, and I wonder about that because that's my pride. Miscarriage of Justice involves Gallatin people, Anna Dotson and her husband, who's a doctor here, and a guy named Charlie Cobb, who's a barber, right up here on the square. It's a romance that went bad. Anna Dotson became very bored in her life. And we'll skip back. Dr. Dotson was everything you think of. He was a very busy doctor. He was an ear, nose, and throat person. He'd been educated in Austria, went to Nashville, did surgery, did house calls. He was head of the Masonic Order tour of about a third of Tennessee, going and making speeches. He was an elder in his church up here in the corner. He was an all-around guy, but Anna went astray, and she met this barber and started carrying on an affair. I'll tell you, I'll read this to you on the back. Maybe that'll do that way. See, I'm gonna give away the mystery, but I guess I can do that. Anna Dodson and her husband, Dr. Walter Dodson, are the pillars of society here in Gallatin. Their reputations are irreproachable until Walter discovered his wife was having an affair with his friend, Charlie Cobb. Charlie Cobb cut Dr. Dodson's hair. The situation escalates into a cold-blooded mid-afternoon murder at a barbershop where Cobb works. He had moved to Nashville after Dr. Dodson told him he had 24 hours to get the letter out of town, and he did. When he came back to Nashville, Dr. Dodson told him not to come within earshot or something like that of Gallatin, which Nashville was not the place he was supposed to come back to. A fatal shot is fired in front of numerous witnesses, and the murderer is taken into custody. But who killed whom? Did Anna's husband shoot her lover, or was it the other way around? Was there overprotection brother who took the law into his own hands? Or maybe it was Anna herself. The murderer refuses to speak a word until a reporter from the Tennessean arrives at the police station and takes a full confession that is published on the front page. That's why I didn't have to go to transcript. The newspapers carried this word for word, which was a little more difficult than the Columbus case. I had to kind of really work on that one through library exchange and newspapers. The trial, I'm talking about now in this case, the trial will reveal more than a few dark secrets, and the verdict is shocking. Based on a real-life case that dominated the headlines in 1913, Miscarriage of Justice is a perfect blend of suspense, intrigue, and powerful courtroom drama. So, if anybody wants to make a movie of this, I'm available. I went to one Michael Conley gave a talk in Nashville not too long ago, well, a long time ago. And I went to his, and he made it very thing. He said, anybody wants to make a movie out of this, I'm available. And I swear he got that movie, that book, and several right after that. Boom, 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 boom. So anyway, maybe that's a magic word. So I'm gonna leave it as a mystery, and I have a copy for you if you want it.
Suicide by proxy, what years is it set in?
Well, 1912 is when the murder happened. 1913. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm talking about suicide by proxy. Oddly enough, that's also 1913.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and it has some similarities as far as the time frame.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, that's one thing they pointed out to me.
Is that your favorite decade?
Yeah,
to write
by
about?
accident. By accident. Actually, it's funny that both these stories were going at the same time. But the one in Columbus made all the big newspapers, Los Angeles Times. I can tell you more. There's another part of the story, but you'll know what happened. But that was it involves a priest, a police chief, and a mayor. And all the characters think of what I'm going to talk about the priest. Anna Dodson, excuse me, I have to skip it. Cecilia Farley obviously didn't want these pictures ever to make the daylight. And her best friend, Pearl, knew it. Well, Pearl and her went to the same church in Columbus, Ohio. And the priest had become very good friends with them. They actually taught Sunday school, if you believe that. The two girls did it, and so the priest was head of the Sunday school part. She was leading this double life, and the priest was beginning to suspect something was going on. I'll have to tell you, there was a mystery, and I'll go further. The guy that she got involved with when she was 17 years old at a dance studio was a married man, and he lied to her for 3 years until she found out this is the guy. So anyway, back to Pearl Luce. Pearl Luce finally went to the father in exasperation. She couldn't get her friend away from this guy. So she went to the father and said, I'm breaching a promise. And she, in confession, told about the pictures. Well, put that aside. The police chief got fired over the investigation of the murder that was involved in this case. And then he found out about the pictures, quite by accident, from a friend of the bad guy. Friend of the bad guy had a friend that dropped it the bomb over coffee, over tea. But he was sworn not. He told Pearl Luce about it. He said, "You can't tell anybody." So the police chief knew what it was, what the problem was. The priest knew what the problem was. Pearl Luce knew what the problem was, and they all became friends at the trial, trying to prove their friend's worth. But neither one of them would tell each other what was really at the base of this murder. So it's kind of an interesting book. But the purpose of that book, they ask you, why do you think that book is interesting? Why do you want to write it? And it has a psychological part. That is, whether it's man or woman, we all see it. The phenomenon of loving your abuser. Whether it's the Stockholm Syndrome or the Hearst case you heard about up through the years. And so it's a psychological part. And then I will tell you, in the end, the police chief finally comes to the conclusion that the way Cecilia Farley dealt with it, she didn't love him any less, she just hated him more. I'll let you tell her that. The police chief got his job back. He appealed to the Supreme Court, the mayor fired him because of his investigation in this case. He was trying to do the right thing. The mayor fired him. And it turns out the mayor was one of the most famous mayors in Columbus history, and the police chief is too, one of the most famous police chiefs. So it had all the ingredients of a big story.
So who was murdered?
Can't tell you.
Oh.
So it's a romantic. The real genre is romantic suspense. But this one, and I'll do it differently. This one had all kinds of genres that could come under religion, and they would send it to all the Facebook customers, and they got bombed. This case is, you can imagine having to go to church with little children around. They just kind of missed it. So I'd love to hear your story about Jade this morning.
Well, she's a lifelong friend of mine, my sister, and her good buddies growing up and the like, so we grew up together. I went to church with them as well. Jade's mother, Mary Alice Dotson, can tell many stories about Miss Anna Dotson. I'm from Westmoreland, and Anna Dotson retired to Westmoreland and lived a very quiet life after, and I don't want to tell a whole lot about it either and stuff, but Miss Anna lived in Westmoreland. Anyway, Jade was talking to me last week, and she reminded me of you coming this time. I happened to be here last week as well with David Wright when he was speaking. So she was supposed to be here tonight, but she had a deposition she had to be at in Nashville. She called me this morning. The interesting thing was, last week when we were talking about this, she did not know I'd read the book at the time, and she said, Judge Gayden in Nashville has written a book. She's a pretty scandalous one about some of my family members several years ago, and her face turned red. She said, there's some sex in it. She said that at the time. I said, well, Jade, I've read it. I said, I know exactly what you're talking about and the like. But she said, he did a fantastic job.
Well, Jade's a great lady. It was tough to write about it. I'm glad to do this in Ohio because I don't have to know everybody. Although I did find the same name of the antagonist. I've got to figure out whether I need to change that name or not because these people are all deceased. But
and it was a story that we knew very little about. There were whispers about it, in church because some of our ancestors had come from church. Whispers about it, but nobody.
That was a fantastic thing about it. Jay said, I don't know the story.
Yeah.
So it was swept under the rug, not only in our own family, but all over. I mean, nobody knew about it. The Gallatin newspapers were almost totally silent. The national newspapers covered the trial pretty good. It's amazing Tennessee didn't know something about it. Or Walter Durham. When Walter Durham didn't know it, I said, I'm writing this story.
Charlie Cobb, the barber, did you run across any family members that survived you?
It's a bad story. I actually went to high school with his nephew. And he was from place over near Clarksville, Woodlawn, somewhere around in there. I can't, he's a judge. He was a judge, a general sessions judge. He was okay with it, but I don't think he liked it, because I didn't portray Charlie Carr with a very good light, obviously. But when I gave one talk up here in the old library, maybe this one, I'm sorry, I'm not sure which one, but Jay's mother was there. And I didn't know that, so I gave the talk, and she came up to me afterwards, and she had all this paraphernalia, and this kind of talks about Anna Johnson. She had this secret pocketbook, very expensive pocketbook, and she started talking about her mother and said, you know how I got this? I told her, I really like your pocketbook. And he says, what do you want? And that was kind of a picture out of what kind of person Anna Johnson really was. And then I ran into a guy named D.O.T.S., and he's died. He's up in Westmoreland. He's an older fellow.
What is his name?
D.O.T., I can't think of his first name. But he was a 13-year-old at that age. He said that Anna used to come to town from Westmoreland. She lived out on the highway, and then she come to Westmoreland, and she had 2 German Shepherds with her all the time. He said, I remember, we were scared to death of her because she had those German Shepherds. We had little rumblings about what she did.
Yeah.
But he said she was a kind person. So it's tough writing about people, even though they're deceased.
So I'm curious to know what the process is like when you're writing, even though it's based on a true story. You obviously have to fill in a lot of blanks, and like the conversation you wrote, obviously.
Good question.
Yeah, how does that work?
It's historical fiction. I've written a fiction novel, and actually historical fiction is harder to write. But you got to take like, let's say my great-grandfather. I've got to do a lot of fictionalizing to make that even palatable, or even somebody wants to pick it up and read it. But I take the basic facts in this book, pretty much all true, but I expand on it. And I have a plan, at least when I write, beginning to end. And I was interested in reading that article about Mary Clark Higgins. She does the same thing. Not that I'm Mary Clark Higgins. She has an outline. A lot of people just start writing. And they're good writers. And Johnny Grissom does it. And just start writing and come out at the end. But I have to have a plan that I have to fictionalize. I mean, the lewd scenes, you're not going to put that, you're not going to know that they're true. You just got to kind of make them up. But you know they happen.